Well, welcome everybody. We're here to talk about paving Harrisburg city streets. Welcome to Bellevue Park. We're right here in one of our most historic neighborhoods in Harrisburg. And we have a project here that we are beginning today that is a $1.1 million paving and patching project that's going to take us all throughout the neighborhood. It's something that we work closely with the neighborhood association on in developing the areas that needed to get top priority. I want to say something about paving first, which is that it may not surprise you to know, but we have identified in the city of Harrisburg over $100 million worth of streets and roads that need to be paved. And this is due to years of deferred maintenance and the city's compromised financial situation. Well, we are finally in a position where we can address that $100 million worth of streets and roads. And I have a plan to systematically get each and every one of those roads paved. But it requires two things. It requires having cash on hand that we can pay for these repairs, and also reestablishing the city's credit rating. And this is why President Williams's approach to tabling a future refinancing of the city's debt is so important. By doing that and depleting our cash reserves, we will not have money on hand to be able to do the paving that our residents deserve. And by doing that, we won't be able to get a credit rating, which is going to allow us to borrow more money to be able to invest in those infrastructure needs. Every resident of this community, every resident of Harrisburg knows how much we need to invest in our infrastructure. And that's what we should be doing over the next several years, and that's what I'm going to continue to push for, along with the help and planning of our great engineering team. And I'm going to let engineer Wayne Martin talk to you a little bit. That's the big context of what we're talking about here. $1 million, 1% of what needs to be done in Harrisburg. But it's certainly a start. And if you look through Harrisburg, you're going to see other multi-million-dollar projects, whether it's 7th Street or 2nd Street, that are being paved right now. But there's so much deferred maintenance and so much need in our city. We've got to tackle it, and we've got to tackle it aggressively, putting all of our resources towards it. A couple comments about this project. The main paving is going to be occurring on 15th Street and Rudy Road and Midland Road. And I'm going to take you over to this historic map of Bellevue Park to show you. In green, you have the systematic resurfacing, including on Magnolia, Midland, and down here on 15th. And in yellow, you have significant patching, and that's behind us right here. It's not just a patch, it's a significant piece of road. I think the guys were just saying it took them about 5 or 6 hours just to mill that out and get that prepared for paving. And after this conference, we're going to go on a walk, if you'd like to join me, and we'll go see some of that paving in action. We're prepared for that. Part of why this is so expensive is when you're paving a road, you're not just doing the roadway per se. You're also making sure that the sidewalks are ADA accessible and that the stormwater inlets are working as appropriate. And all of those things take time and cost resources. I think on this project we're doing 17 new ADA ramps just on 15th Street alone, another 11 on Rudy, 4 on Midland, 7 on Market. It really adds up to dozens and dozens of new ADA ramps. And the inlets and the paving combined are going to make sure that the stormwater runoff works in such a way that it doesn't exacerbate our stormwater problems any further already here in Harrisburg. None of this would have been possible without the support of Shiloh Paving. They were the low bidders on this $1.1 million project. We want to thank them. We also want to thank our urban engineers, which is our construction inspection team. But we especially want to thank City Engineer Wayne Martin, because Wayne took time to meet with the neighborhood association here and to basically say, look, we want to invest $1 million, work with us and tell us where it will be, where it will bring the greatest return and have the greatest positive impact on the neighborhood. And they did that, and that's why we chose the sites that we did. Before we say anything further, I want to introduce Wayne Martin, and he can talk about this project in a little bit greater detail. Wayne.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. So a few things about the project. The Mayor mentioned South 15th Street, which is about a third of the project because of all the ADA ramps and the inlets and whatnot. And that work had already started. So if you go out to Swatara and 15th Street, you'll see some excavation work that had occurred past 24 hours. And hopefully early next week, they'll start restoring that concrete. The bulk of the resurfacing, as the mayor mentioned, will take place early spring, while we continue to work through late fall and early spring, even winter perhaps, on doing those ADA ramps and what have you. So here's our schedule. If you want to take a closer peek, we do have maps of the South 15th Street section. There's also some ADA compliant bus stops added to this project up on Market Street. And so if a good example of those, if you take a ride down North 6th Street, we did some the full ADA compliant bus stops between Camp and Emerald earlier this year. I'd like to thank our construction inspection team, our urban engineers. They obviously make sure that the city's getting what they're paying for, and that is proper asphalt, proper ADA compliant slopes. They do the ramp reviews prior to construction, then after construction they assist with the inspection of those, make sure everything's compliant. So there are eyes and ears on the job site, and we do appreciate all the work that they do for us. And the mayor mentioned Shiloh. So this project was actually budgeted at $1.6 million. The bids came in about 1.1, and about 100,000 we pay for inspection services. So we're looking good on this. So that's liquid fuel funds that we get to reallocate next year for another project, and expand the scope. So we're real happy that Shiloh put forth a competitive bid. There was 4 bidders. Back in 2014, the city was lucky to get one contractor bidding on jobs. So we've come a long way in the competitive world. We're seeing good pricing, but now's the time. And I think the mayor hit the nail on the head. The longer we defer this maintenance, the more expensive it's going to be, not just material costs and labor costs of the city, but that degradation of a road. The road we're standing on, this section of road right here, if we were to do some crack sealing, we could maybe get 10 more years out of it. But if we wait 3 more years to do anything, then that's a total resurface, and that's 10 times the cost. So we have to be smart about how we do it. We do have a plan, as the mayor said. We paid I think around $50,000 to scan every road in the city and to develop this plan. So now's the time to implement that plan, and that's to resurface 147 miles of road in the city of Harrisburg in the next 10 years. Now's the time to do it. So I appreciate everybody on the same page with that, and do the service the residents here deserve. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
And it's $100 million.
And it is $100 million.
Not a cheap bill. All right. Well, we're excited about it. This is just a part of it, and we'll take a walk up to the paving site in just a minute. But before we go, since we're at a microphone, if any media has any questions, happy to answer them, or have Wayne answer them if I can't.
Could you just talk more about just how important it is for the city to make sure that roads are in good condition and that sidewalks are ADA compliant?
Absolutely. So for years, when the city was in fiscal distress, there just simply weren't the resources to be able to do these $1 million plus paving jobs. Everything had to be done in cash only because we couldn't access the markets or borrow money. We are on the cusp of restoring the city's credit rating now, which will allow us to borrow money for some projects like this and do it responsibly. But we also have built up a sizable cash reserve. And when I go door to door in this city and when I speak to our residents, the number one concern that they have 9 times out of 10 is what can we do to improve the state of our streets and our roads and our sidewalks. And close behind that is concerns about stormwater and everything. All of this is tied together in investing again in infrastructure, and that's what the city is in a position to be able to do. We just need to make sure we don't squander all of our cash doing, paying off bondholders, and instead invest significant amounts of that into the $100 million worth of projects that are identified and ready to go. So in my budget proposal for next year and moving forward, you're going to see that $100 million shrink over the next decade. If you imagine $10 million a year of paving projects, which is significant for Harrisburg, it's about what we're doing this year. If you take 7th Street and 2nd Street and this project and others and combine, that will get the job done, and that will allow us to, I think, have the quality of life that our residents want and our residents deserve. So this is about them. Wayne was modest, again, in his conversations with the neighborhood association. The way this works best is when you have an active and engaged neighborhood association literally taking you on walks in the street and pointing out areas that need to be done. But we're pleased to be in a position financially where we can begin to invest these millions of dollars, and it's an exciting moment for Harrisburg. We're right on the cusp of reversing decades of infrastructure neglect.
Mayor, could you also briefly discuss the impact that this will have in terms of job creation in our community as well?
Well, that's the other thing. Imagine if you are putting $100 million into infrastructure repairs in Harrisburg. The economic, and this is Otto Banks, our city's economic development director, rightly pointing to the economic stimulus that has, especially if we couple it with the efforts to train locally and put an emphasis on workforce development and connecting local labor to the winners of these contracts, which is something that we're also committed to doing. So from a stimulus standpoint, this means jobs. It means business revenue that's also returning to the city, but it also means uplifting the quality of life for everybody that lives in Harrisburg. Yep.
What are some of the next paving projects that you've identified?
So the 100, it's an astounding amount of streets and roads that need to be paved. They're located throughout the entire city. Wayne described the process a little bit. We actually had basically a robot drive over every street and road in the city of Harrisburg and create a map. Maybe you should describe it in greater technical description, but talk a little bit about where those $100 million worth of roads are.
Excuse me. So there's two projects actually going out for bid. Hopefully this week. One is the Mulder Square project that everybody knows. Hopefully, it's been through a lot of public outreach on it.
Bring them back.
Yeah, we'll bring you back for that one. So maybe in the next couple weeks we'll do a kickoff or a groundbreaking ceremony for that project. The other project that kicks off is again on North 6th Street. We've put a focus on sort of our main arterial roads up until now, just because everyone uses them. Like everyone in the city seems to travel on 2nd Street or 7th Street or Maclay Street. So we've put a lot of investment on those arterials, and so the shift, as we see it, would be more of the neighborhood streets. So we do have a report that generates that priority. I can't, as I stand here today, I can't tell you which streets they are, and part of that reason is because although this report prioritized the list based on pavement condition, it also considered a backlog of roads, so those roads would cost quite a bit of money to do. So the approach we would probably take is save the roads that can be saved, and then manage that backlog, if that makes sense. Because if we can save those roads, it's not $150 million investment; it's only a $100 million investment. So that's the approach. And then the other is the coordination with CRW and UGI. I hope you've noticed all the work that Capital Region Water and UGI has done with the restoration of their cuts. So UGI obviously is going through a major mainline replacement as mandated by federal law. So when they're complete, they're restoring sometimes an entire street. And same thing with Capital Region Water. They're using Penvest loans and other methods to replace sewer lines and water lines, and when they come back in, they're doing restorations of roads. So we're in the process right now of reconciling the ones that already occurred, the restorations, with the report, and also the planned restorations or the planned projects with Capital Region Water, UGI mainly, and merging those documents and sorting through that priority schedule.
So, in short, I have a list of scores of roads, all of which need to be repaved in every corridor of the city. The key to the plan is to be make sure that we coordinate with utilities and CRW, as well as to make sure that we spread out the schedule into all corridors of the city and don't overwhelm one particular sector from a traffic standpoint. But as Wayne says, we started with some of the major roads, your 2nd Streets, your 6th Street, your soon to be others. And the goal is to really address those neighborhood streets, which are the city's responsibility, and yet it's a responsibility that has been neglected due to a lack of funding up to this point.